Okay, so you guys have seen me DIY not one, but two of my skull pandas. Somebody somewhere in my comments were asking me to redesign Pranky Peanut, and while I would love to do that, I do not have the funds to buy all of these to DIY them for you guys. So I'm gonna give you my design ideas for free. I don't necessarily hate Pranky Peanut's design. I think the beige little legs are bothering me the most, and I understand it's meant to represent this inner portion of the peanut, but peanut does have this inner red shell as well. So my first design is kind of keeping with the peanut theme, but just dialing it up a little bit more. And so I would have kept the zigzag design on the pom-poms onto the faceplate, and then the same way that I made this little guy's eyes pop green, I would have done that in red. And then instead of painting the entire hair a different color, I just would have done like an ombre effect on the tips. And the way that you achieve this is very simple. This middle section is detachable, and you would dip dye the bottom beige part of the body. Just be very careful not to get that dye up to this portion of the head because that is not removable. But if dip dyeing is too much, you could always just dye the whole thing a different color, and I think it would work really well with like warm colors like red, orange, even a hot pink you could get away with. I think greens, blues, and purples would work very well as well. I don't think this dye is going to give you that much of a hard problem. I think you just have to be careful of not getting like too light of a blue like this because it will turn more of like a turquoise color. You have to use a little bit of color theory when you're thinking about dyeing things. This next design is a hear me out, okay? Christmas tree Pranky Peanut. Just because so many people hated Partita, it's the same faceplate. I love Partita. I got a bootleg just so I could have Partita, and I think that this would be really funny, a little tongue-in-cheek. The way that you would achieve this, again, is you dip dye the bottom half, you remove this portion, you dye it completely green, and then you dip dye the top portion green. So you just be careful not to get those colors too muddled in the middle, and you should be fine. I also did it in black and red, but you could really pick any real color like on the bottom because it's such a light beige. You would use the same technique in dyeing it, so dip dye the top half, dip dye the bottom half, and then you can, while you're dyeing the top half, you could just completely dye the middle section. So this is probably more or less what my Pranky Peanut would have looked like had I ended up with this design, and I think it actually turns out very well. You could, again, if you don't want to do dip dyeing, you could just do one whole color. I think that you just have to play a little bit with color theory and understanding how the color of dye is going to turn out. You want to use a synthetic dye because these are synthetic materials. You do not want to use the ones that come in powdered form that are more for natural fibers. So just beware of that. You know, on high heat, 30 minutes to 45 minutes of dyeing, and you should get the color as vibrant as I got this one. So that's my design ideas as well as my tips and tricks that I can give you guys.